There was gossip at the royal court that the new queen was spending her evenings alone or trying unsuccessfully to conceive an heir. The Poles were unhappy with the election of their new king and his marriage to an Austrian archduchess. During its history, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had experienced 8 queens from the Habsburg dynasty, but only one of them earned the love and respect of her subjects, so much so that she was even offered power after her husband died. Although Poles to this day believe that all things German are harmful to their country, Eleanor was still able to charm her new subjects. Eleonora Maria Josepha was born at the imperial court in Vienna on May 31, 1653. She was the daughter of Ferdinand III, Holy Roman Emperor, King of Bohemia and Hungary, and Eleanor of Mantua, niece of the Queen of Poland, wife of 2 kings, Ladislaw IV and John Casimir, and Frenchwoman Louise Marie. The girl grew up a refined blonde with an exceptionally mild character and kindness to others. As befits an imperial daughter, she received a very good education. From her early youth, she was characterized by unusual tact and common sense, and it was these qualities that came in handy in Poland in the future. Young Eleanor fell in love with the heir to the throne of Lorraine, Charles V. The girl's love was not only mutual with her chosen one, but also received the approval of her family and, above all, of her brother, at that time the current Emperor Leopold I, who succeeded her father at the age of 18 in 1658. Charles claimed the crown of Poland and was sure to get it. It was decided that immediately after the Polish elections and the abdication of Jan Casimir from the Polish throne, the young couple would marry and Eleanor would become Queen of Poland. The plan succeeded as the daughter of the Habsburgs became Queen of Poland, but not as expected. Charles lost the election. The Polish nobility who gathered for the election rejected the candidates of foreigners, including Charles of Lorraine, and proclaimed their compatriot, the son of a Russian voivode, Michael Korobut-Vishnevetsky, as king. Making this unsuccessful choice, as it turned out in the near future, the Polish nobility was guided by the legend of his father, a great hero of the Polish Cossack War, knowing little about the candidate himself. They expected that Michael would be the embodiment of masculinity, chivalry, and extraordinary valor. To this was added the fame of the commander and the boundless admiration and respect that the soldiers had for him. However, the unhappy king struggled with the legend of his father to the end of his days. In addition, his father was famous for his ruthlessness to his enemies and the methods by which he suppressed the Cossack uprising, cause much controversy today. The prince was fond of elaborate torture and execution of his enemies, whom he liked to stab to death. Moreover, he forced his only son, Michael, to watch these cruel spectacles. Probably the spectacle had a negative effect on the psyche of young Michael, who was not lucky enough to occupy the Polish throne. Soon the newly elected king disappointed his subjects. Having ascended the throne of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, 28-year-old Michael Korobut-Vishnevetsky showed no interest in politics. His main occupations consisted of going to church, attending balls and feasts, but he was completely unable to solve the issues discussed in Parliament. He found pleasure in eating and drinking, and his enormous appetite became a subject of conversation and criticism. After becoming king, Michael should have found himself a wife. His mother, Griselda Vishnevetsky, tried to marry him to the niece of Hetman Jan Sobieski, Teofila Ostraszewska, but was unsuccessful. In search of a bride for the king, his entourage turned to the courts of France and Spain, but Michael preferred the Habsburgs. He began negotiations with Austrian diplomats. Information about his intentions was passed to Vienna, from where a portrait of a German princess was secretly sent to Poland. In December 1669, an offer of marriage was made on behalf of the Polish king, which was accepted. Eleanor, under the age of 17, resigned herself to her fate despite her love for Charles. Her dowry amounted to 100,000 gold coins and 400,000 as a wedding gift. The wedding was scheduled for February 27, 1670 in Częstochowa. In numerous portraits, Eleanor is depicted as a slender young woman with graceful hands and a slender figure corresponding to the modern canons of beauty. She had beautiful blue-green eyes and expressive lips, like many Habsburgs. Eleanor loved luxurious dresses and jewelry such as pearls, sapphires, and diamonds. She looks attractive in portraits, and contemporaries unanimously noted that she was even more beautiful in reality. Usually, the comparison of portraits with reality ended in disappointment, but not in her case. The alliance with the Habsburgs was badly received in Poland. The first-placed primate even refused to marry the couple. The papal nuncio Galeazzo Mariscotti performed the ceremony. Michael, the 29-year-old groom, was short, obese, and prematurely bald. He hid his baldness under an elaborate wig, which made his figure even more ridiculous. Michael was an educated man, but evil tongues claimed that he could not say anything intelligent in any of the 6 languages he knew. His fondness for foreign clothes irritated the Poles, and rumors circulated that Michael wore women's underwear. The wedding ceremony was sumptuous. While tapestries were brought, food was prepared for 7,000 people and fodder for 3,000 horses. After the ceremony, Eleanor's mother accused the groom of being moody and left Poland, taking all of her daughter's jewelry. A great deal of food was eaten at the wedding, and much wine, beer, and honey was drunk. Despite all this, Eleanor probably continued to love Charles, and Michael found it difficult to get him out of her head. There were rumors of his disposition to his sex and his lack of masculine power in the marriage bed. Allegedly, for the first time after the marriage ceremony, there were rumors at court that the king could not. In fact, the court sought to make fun of the king on every occasion. Michael wore many wigs, which caused ridicule. He had wigs for different occasions: black for funerals, gray for Sejm meetings, and blonde for military parades. The wigs were made from the natural hair of innocent girls, as it was believed that only such hair lends itself to the art of hairdressing. In 1672, a storm broke out over royal attire. The king had to appear at the Sejm in a polished suit which he did not have, and it had to be urgently sewn. The king stated that it was impossible to prepare a decent outfit in one day, and he was supported by the treasurer Sumaski, who presented the conclusion that Sigismund III and his successors had abandoned the national costume in favor of foreign clothes. The seemingly trifling matter provoked ridicule of Vishnevetsky, whose attire was called buffoonish. The king's wife, Eleanor, at first met with a cold reception in Poland. The subjects, unaccustomed to and disliking foreigners, even pulled her hair to see if it was real. Eleanor bore this with humility, and her tactfulness led the courtiers to love the new queen, though it seems inconceivable that a woman of her stature would so calmly tolerate ridicule, much less touching. A week after the wedding, Michael Korobut left Eleonora in the care of the court-martial and set off for the capital. The queen arrived in Warsaw later. Meanwhile, the monarch fought with the Sejm, as they were unwilling to recognize a German from the Habsburg dynasty as their queen. Eventually, the deputies relented and recognized her as queen, providing her with a 100,000 zloty dowry as well as annual payments. Michael Korobut's reign was short and difficult for the country. Public support for the king was waning, while Eleonora was winning the sympathy of her subjects. She advised her husband to be restrained and reasonable, mediating negotiations with his opponents, including Hetman Jan Sobieski, who hated the king, calling him a monkey. Jan Sobieski had the opposite impression of the queen, whom he considered not only beautiful, but also a kind and wise woman. It was Eleonora that he set as an example to his French wife Maricienka as a model of a royal wife. The queen was pregnant twice, but both times she failed to carry the child to term. There were rumors that the pregnancies and miscarriages were staged by the king, who was called a womanizer or powerless. Despite gossip that Michael was not attracted to women or did not have enough male power to conceive offspring, their marriage looked almost perfect from the outside. But the fact remains that there were no children in the marriage. Eleanor accompanied her husband on trips and at ceremonies. In 1672, the imperial envoy Stommel learned from the primate that there were plans to overthrow the king, but Eleanor refused to interfere in politics. The situation was deteriorating, but Eleanor was able to secure an agreement between the warring parties in March 1673. In the fall of 1673, Michael Korobut and Sobieski went on a campaign, but the king fell seriously ill and returned to Lwów. On November 6, he received his last anointing and died on November 10, 1673, after a 5-year reign. There were rumors of his poisoning, allegedly poison contained in roast duck and cranberry sauce, a favorite delicacy of the sovereign, but the autopsy of the body did not reveal anything suspicious. Eleanor was not present at her husband's death and returned to Warsaw. As Queen Dowager, she remained in Poland, assuming her late husband's debts. The emperor persuaded her to secure the throne for Charles of Lorraine, but she refused. Politics did not become her passion. It did not bring happiness, and she didn't want to return home to Vienna. When Sobieski became king, Eleanor moved to a convent in Bielany and planned to live in Toruń. In 1675, she left Poland forever, whose citizens kept a grateful memory of their young queen. Eleanor finally found happiness, love, and long-awaited motherhood. Her lover from her youth, Charles, was still waiting for Eleanor and married her in 1678, 9 years after the unsuccessful election to the Polish throne. They settled in Innsbruck, which Eleanor owned, where they lived a happy life. Eleanor bore her husband 6 children, and Charles took part in the Battle of Vienna on the side of King Sobieski. Charles died in 1690, and the former Polish queen became a widow again at the age of only 36. After her husband's death, she devoted herself to the upbringing and education of her children from her marriage to Charles. After Sobieski's death, counting on the sympathy of her former subjects, she even nominated her firstborn son as King of Poland. However, Leopold took his place after his father's death, becoming Duke of Lorraine and marrying a niece of Louis XIV. Eleanor died on December 17, 1697, at the age of 44. She was buried in the Capuchin Church in Vienna.